welcome. Today's talk is going to be titled Down the Funnel, How to Achieve Perfect Sales and Marketing Alignment. David Lehman is an EVP at Global Field Operations at Yext. David Lehman leads all strategic support functions of revenue generation, including sales development, operations, and enablement globally. He has more than 20 years of technology and sales experience, leading and growing teams at some of the world's most well-known technology companies, including Salesforce and Campaign Monitor. Please welcome him to the stage as he shares how he built Yext demand generation team focused on KPIs and content campaigns to align sales goals and exceed pipeline and revenue generation goals for the company. Please help me welcome Dave Lehman.
Good afternoon. It's great to have a great audience here. I think we talked a little bit louder than they did next door, which is a great start. I'm from the West Coast now, or that's where I live. I came back to Boston for the first time in a long time yesterday, and it's great to be here. I went to college here, and it was before the Big Dig and before the Seaport, like all of it. It's amazing to see what Boston is becoming. It's great to be here. So I'm Dave Lehman. I'm EVP of Field Operations at Yext, but really what I am is an accidental marketer. This is not what I originally intended to do. This is not what I signed up to do even when I got to Yext. And I'll tell you that story a little because it's pertinent to hear about how sales and marketing need to really work together. I was actually originally going to be doing this with my partner in crime, my VP of marketing, but she is 8.5 months pregnant, so I wasn't going to drag her up on stage to do a tag team duo. So, but a lot of this is her work as well. So, my career, I actually was an engineer out of MIT and got into the engineering world and realized I didn't really want to be an engineer when I got that first job. And then I slowly got into the software and sales side of things, selling to really everybody, selling to large enterprises, large banks, selling to lawyers, selling to technology companies across the board, really getting that enterprise experience at a company called Autonomy that got bought by HP. And then I actually went and tried to sell to farmers and growers. You guys heard Jennifer Gardner's talk this morning, which was fantastic. She's talking about those growers that are in the Central Valley of California. I went and tried to sell to them. I can sell to a lot of people. I had a really hard time selling to that group, but at a company called Pure Sense where we tried to help them with water management. And then I got to this, at the time, kind of small, unknown company called Salesforce, and had an amazing opportunity to get into sales and sales leadership there around the SMB space and mid-market space, and really see what a developed engine on the B2B side could really look like. And had a great run there, and learned a ton, got sort of that MBA, and went to a lot of the Dreamforce conferences. This is my first inbound conference with that. I'm actually super impressed with this as well. This has been amazing, the energy and the show that they're putting on here. I went from there to a company called Campaign Monitor, and really started getting into selling into the marketer and understanding how the marketer thinks, how they buy, how their budgets work, the different decisions they have to make on their spend. And it's in the email marketing space. The other thing I did, I was the chief revenue officer, but I worked very closely with our CMO. And in that process, we had our battles, we had our fights, we had this sales development team in between that was supposed to qualify leads and get them over to us. But we had a kind of a complex system. We had both a self-service business where it was supposed to come inbound, close on its own, and that side of it. And then we had this sales team that I was building up that was becoming a bigger and bigger part of the revenue stream. And we had this constant battle of where do we put our spend, where do we look to leverage our ad spend, all of it. It was a constant battle. And in fact, we took that SDR team, that sales development team, and they started on my team. And then we moved them over to the marketing team because we thought that would help. And then we eventually had to put them into a neutral third-party corner under sales ops because we couldn't figure out how to get that process right. But for me, it was great because then I got to see how this whole thing worked. I got to see what marketing needed. We would butt heads, but eventually get to some really good spots, which then got me over to Yext. And when I joined Yext, the intention was for me to run the small and mid-sized business there and some of the sales development and pipeline. What you'll hear in a minute is how it got a lot more complex and a lot more exciting actually with that. But for those who don't know Yext, let's make sure I set that stage right, because it's important to see what our strategies were and how that played out. So Yext is a search company, and for those who haven't noticed, the world of search is changing dramatically, especially for the consumer. It's really gone from blue links and results like that to answers. It's gone to Google and everyone trying to give you an actual answer back to your question. What's happened is that we've all been trained. We've been trained to ask longer and longer questions. It's no longer about keywords. It's no longer about putting one word up like hamburger. It's about asking more questions and longer questions. Today, 70% of questions or searches have over 3 words. So it continues to grow, and it's happening in more and more places. You know, it's on mobile apps, it's on voice assistants, it's on people's websites. They're asking more and more questions out there. We were looking for a restaurant last night. I was out with one of my old college buddies, and he picked up his phone and said, hey Siri, where's a restaurant that's open and has an availability tonight? Couldn't really find one. It was a pretty busy night. I picked up Google Assistant and I asked similar questions, and he's gluten-free, so I had to try and find that. So those are the type of customer interactions that we're having to deal with as a brand as well. So really what's happening is the customer journey is starting with a question and continues with more and more questions as they go through that buyer journey. And if you as a brand want to engage them, you need to meet them at that intent, capture their intent of those questions to have the right answer. And this is where Yext comes in. Yext provides a single source of truth where a brand would put all of its information and then distribute it out to over 150 different sources, out to Google, out to Amazon, out to Alexa, out to even on their own website, making sure you've got your information structured the right way so you can answer those questions. Biggest companies in the world are using this, from the Adidas to Chase to McDonald's, Denny's. They're relying on Yext to power their information to get brand verified answers out there. The way it does this, underneath the covers, there's what's called a knowledge graph. This is the way Google now structures their data. About 12 years ago, they came up with this knowledge graph to provide actual answers when people do searches. This is the same platform that Yext has underneath the covers to structure it so that you can answer questions, run your analytics, do your reputation management, and then on top of that has 3 products, one for website search called Answers, so you can take that knowledge graph and answer questions for your consumers so that when they're on your site so they're not bouncing. Intent pages, live landing pages that are dynamically created, and then listings where you can take that same information and publish it out to the world. So that's Yext, and one of the reasons I give you that background is that's part of my contract. On the sales side and on my marketing side, I have a contract with my product and my brand marketing teams. That every time I get on stage, every time I'm in front of a customer, I get out there and I talk about the brand, and I use it the right terms. I talk about single source of truth, and I talk about perfect answers everywhere, and I talk about the knowledge graph. Like, that's part of my relationship. That's part of my contract that I've set up with the brand team. And these are the 3 pillars of marketing the way we look at it. And we've even actually divided the company into teams into these 3 areas. The product marketing side of things, right? Those are those, pretty graphs, pretty pictures. The product team owns that actually, and they tell us how to talk about it, what visuals to use, and that's their piece. The brand piece, right? We're out there trying to get a name for it. More and more people we want to know Yext, and a lot of that has to do with being consistent and having that spend and that drive around the brand. And then the third, and this is the area where we'll talk a lot more about today, but it's demand gen, on the demand generation side of it. And again, a lot of times a CMO or somebody will bring all these together. For us at Yext, the way things work really well is to separate product, as close to product as possible. So our products and chief product and strategy officer owns the product side. We've got somebody who owns the brand side of it. and then we'll talk about the demand gen and how we split that out and put that closer to sales, closer to the interaction with it. So at Yext, we're a large public company, been around for about 12 years, doing over $200 million in revenue, 153 companies, 15 offices. We actually hold about 215 million facts about our customers. So we've scaled, we've done a great job growing big, but we did it without demand gen, or without certainly an advanced demand gen strategy. So as I mentioned, when I came in, there was actually two sides of the business already. One was the VSB, the very small businesses. We were selling to there for years. And we had one trick to get in there, and I'll show you guys what that was in a second. And then the other was we focused on the enterprise. So it's sort of a weird history where you start with the smallest customers and then jumped all the way up to the enterprise. And then it was my job to kind of come in and fill in between that CBU, commercial business unit. So what were the two strategies we had? So the first was we had one trick. It was called Scan My Business, where essentially a business who thought they had their location information, their address, their phone number wrong on their website would fill out a form and they'd get a score back. Every single thing we did on the marketing side, everything to generate inbound demand, pushed people to that experience. In this case, we had a partnership with Yahoo where it said, hey, is this your business? Do you want to own this and make sure you have control of that information? Great, click there and you get to this landing page. I'm telling you, everything went that way. We had our branded search. Just even someone searching Yext would get driven directly to that scan. Funny story, our now creative director, when he joined Yext, he did his searches and searched for Yext, trying to see what he was going to run into. He did that search, ended up on this landing page, and thought that was the homepage of the company. And he's like, oh my God, what am I dealing with? Like, this is how primitive this company is, that their homepage is a one form like this that doesn't have any escape buttons. Everything has to go through this. So that was that one trick that we built up. It worked. We put about $6 million into this every year, and we get about 1,000 leads a week. And we had a team of like 70 people that would do nothing but take these calls and try and sell at this side of the business. So that's what we consider demand gen. It was one trick. Again, it got sort of the smallest customers out there. The next thing we did was, again, we went big. We went and said, well, how do we get into the enterprise? And for that, it's a very, very different motion, right? It's about big events. And in this case, this is Onward, our event. But we get about 1,000 people to it, and it's super high touch. Everything we want to do is high touch. Everyone gets a big gift when they get there. Everyone gets, and this was our whole strategy for the enterprise, was do big dinners, take people to sporting events, send them personalized mailers. Again, really high touch stuff where I was going to go sort of one-to-one to somebody. And that's a great strategy. It helps close and get some of the biggest business. It also will help mature the pipeline. So not just new deals, but get deals in flight over the line. It was a great strategy. But for me, coming in trying to build a mid-market and SMB business, it wasn't going to work. That wasn't the strategy that was going to get us to the next level. So, always optimistic, of course, but we had a blank slate. I had an opportunity to come in and say, how do we do this and do this right so that I can build a machine that has all the right pieces of demand gen and get, again, sales and marketing working better together. Our CMO at the time said, okay, I hear you, Dave. I get that these are a problem. I get that you need more inbound flow for your mid-market and SMB teams. So let's hire a consultant. Let's bring in somebody who's paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring in the experts to do this thing. And they were great. They had some great ideas. They brought in some benchmarks. But there was too much sort of fundamentally wrong with our business and how we had set everything up that relying on an outside consultant just wasn't going to do it. It had to change internally. And so I got to a point where I think I probably asked too many questions of the CMO and the CEO. And eventually the CEO said, okay, enough, Dave, you're asking too many questions that we don't know how to deal with. You take it, you do it, we're going to smack sales and marketing together. And it's not going to be a marketing versus sales, it's not going to be this disruption. You're going to have the whole thing. Figure out how to make sure it works and that it's seamless. So I said, okay, what are the guiding principles that we should have in this system? What should we do to set this up for success? The first was shared goals, right? We can't have marketing going after one target and sales going after another. That just wasn't going to work. The others, we had to be speaking the same language. We had to have clear definitions that everybody was using across the board, or it wasn't going to work. It would be too much talking at each other and missing each other's points. And then the others, we had to hold each other accountable. An SLA, a service level agreement, is, hey, I send you this lead, you have X amount of time to make sure you respond to it. And we documented every single one of those handoffs so that in both directions, everybody was held accountable for what they had to do. All right, so this is my first big secret to the marketing world. It doesn't matter how many leads you generate. It doesn't. Because it could be a billion of the wrong leads or 2 of the right leads. That's not what sales needs. That's not what's going to make it successful. For years, right, it's been about lead gen goals. How many people can I get to a webinar? How many people can I get to download my white paper? How many scans can I get at a booth? How many t-shirts can I give away to get another scan of somebody who's never gonna want to talk to me or buy, right? So that mindset we had to get out of it. And then next, so we got to say, okay, let's start focusing on pipeline goals. The actual things that salespeople sell off of, which is real pipeline, things that have been qualified and brought through. And to do that, we had to actually rethink all of our pipeline. We had to rethink our entire strategy. It wasn't just marketing. We had to look at our entire business and say, how do we think about pipeline? At Salesforce, we had this thing, we called it the four horsemen of the apocalypse. It was the AEs, the BDRs, partner, and marketing. So those were the 4. But it was set up in such a combative style. It was all designed to, oh, this is marketing's doing it versus sales is doing it versus BDRs are doing it. That's not what we wanted. We wanted a system where everybody could work together, and we knew it was a good thing if somebody went through all of these channels. So I was joking and threw out the term, hey, how about party of 5? And for those a little bit younger than me, they kind of missed the idea that this was a 90s TV show, and so I sounded really smart, like, oh, that's really catchy, it's really good. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take it. My first win as a marketer was to brand this thing. But we set it up as AE outbound, where they're doing their own work, BDRs, who are focused solely on outbound, business development reps, marketing, which was inbound, partners, which were inbound, and then we separated out upsell as a whole other party because we wanted to make sure we were measuring that and looking at it clearly. I think we all look at different attribution models and we can argue them all day long. The reality is there's no perfect attribution model. To me, what's worked is picking one and everybody aligning around it and using the same metrics around it. In an ideal world, we'd look at multi-touch, right? And this is multi-touch of, hey, they downloaded an ebook, then they read the newsletter, attended an event, webinar. But we even wanted to look beyond that, not just multi-touch within marketing, but if marketing, if they download an ebook and then a BDR called them, and then an AE reached out, and then a partner also, like all those, that's a great path. If somebody can get those multiple touches, that's a great thing. So we went back and forth. There was still this big debate. Do we go first touch attribution or last touch? Where do we count it as the important thing? Again, there's no right answer to this. Where we ended up was first touch attribution, saying when a new contact comes in and gets engaged with, again, an ebook or goes to an event, marketing. If a BDR reached out and found a new contact and reached out to him, great, BDR gets the generated attribution for that. We did set a 180-day timer to that, so if someone hasn't been touched or interacted in 180 days, we would reset it and give it a new party designation. And again, we did it off the lead source and then tied that to the actual person. That person who did that event, if that became the opportunity, that's how we gave that attribution and that credit. Not saying it's the only way to do it, but that's what we all decided on, and we're sticking with it. But again, we're back to this idea that it can't just be tossing leads over the fence and getting them over to sales. It's got to be more systematic than that. And for us, that was all about having one role called an SDR, Sales Development Rep, where all they do is take inbound leads, qualify them, and try and set meetings. That's it. That's all they do. They don't also go outbound. They don't also, go to events. That's all they do. They're sitting there ready to take in all these marketing leads and be that neutral party to make it work. Again, there's a bunch of different qualification styles. I've used ANIM in the past. In this case, we're using BANT, budget, authority, need, and timing. And again, this is part of setting that terminology and locking that in across the company, right? It's budget. Does the account have a way to pay for their services? Can contact make a buying decision? Or can they get to somebody who can make that buying decision? Need, this is probably the biggest one. Does the prospect have a functional or business need that we can actually solve? Do we have the product that matches what they need? And we train our SDRs to be super honest about that. If they don't, if it's a real big stretch, it's okay, let it go. We've got other ways to get back to them. And then timeline. Do they have a compelling event or enough pain that would cause them to get going right now? And then what we do is we have those A and N. We say SDR, that's your whole job is to get us A and N. It'll be the rep's job to qualify for B and T. Again, not the only model, but a model that we literally print out, have laminated on the desks of all the AEs and all the SDRs to make sure everybody gets it and talks about these things the same way. This is what our inbound flow looks like. So again, back to getting a clear terminology, and this is not just a marketing thing. Again, this has to go across the whole company, the whole sales process. But we start with a lead. If it's qualified for marketing, it's a marketing qualified lead, at which point it'll get passed to that SDR. It'll become an SAL, a sales accepted lead. From there, if the SDR can set a meeting, it'll become an SQL, a sales qualified lead. The only person who can call this thing an SQL is the AE. They have to get that A, so they've got to get all 4 letters. They got to get full band. And if they do, it becomes pipeline. And at that point, we say, okay, now it's pipeline. Now we're going to start measuring for win rates. Before that, we don't care. Like, it's not real pipeline until the SDR takes it, qualifies it, and then the AE takes it and says, yes, this is mine. And this is such a key piece, because this is where, when we're measuring all the way through to that SQL for marketing, there's no like misalignment, because the AE has to say, yes, this is absolutely a real deal, and it should count, and everyone should get credit for this thing. So how does this all work? How did that come together? Well, the first is, again, back to incentives. We had to make sure people like the SDRs, the marketing team, everybody was gold and had these incentives around getting deals not just in the door, but all the way to pipeline. Weekly syncs. This is what I learned at Campaign Monitor, but this is the only way we unstuck things at Campaign Monitor. So I put it up front in this case. We would sit there every single week for the first 2 months, and we would review every deal that went through the funnel, that went from that MQL to SQL. Every single one, with all the people, with the SDR managers, with the AE managers, with the marketing team, and we would all agree, did this go the right way? Was this the right thing to do? And it was a big pain in the butt, and eventually we were like, we can stop doing this because we're all aligned and agree that this thing is right. And then the other thing is continuing that close communication, because it doesn't stop. You're going to find new holes, you're going to find new things, and you got to keep that conversation going. All right, so from there, we added in all the normal demand gen essential stuff that you needed, right? A demo request form and made that really nice and A/B tested that. We did some ABM on, through LinkedIn and had a full paid approach that we could fine tune and put the right people in place for that. Organic traffic, we set up drift, we set up phone number, like we got all the pieces there that would properly capture the demand gen side of it. But it doesn't stop there, right? That's just a piece of it. We're going to talk about how do we keep this aligned with the sales team. So we came up with this idea. It's not a novel idea. We just sort of branded it this, but we called it a sales strike. Again, when I got there was a lot of people doing a lot of great things. Product marketing was putting out amazing white papers and competitive decks. The marketing team was shooting after their own thing and trying to put out some thought leadership every once in a while. Sales was doing their own like cocktail events and they, depending on the manager, would do a call blitz and do their different things. But we said, okay, enough of that. Let's get everybody aligned and stay focused. And if we have to, let's do less things, but do them really well. So we came up again with these sales strikes, which became coordinated events approach. And what we said is we're going to do 4 per quarter, and that's it. Every quarter, the quarter before, we'll decide what they are, and we're going to lock down those 4 things, and no one else is going to do anything. Everyone else is, at least in the beginning, we had to be really strict about it. Don't go do anything else unless it's in one of these sales strikes. And what we'd say is, okay, we're going to pick one brand campaign, we're going to pick one product campaign, one vertical campaign, and one thought leadership. And with that, we were going to do not just one thing with it, we'd have a series of events across all the team, from, again, BDRs making calls, AEs reaching out and nominating people, marketing putting up multiple events for people to call to. So get everybody, again, together in a line. And this was my favorite one. This was a great sales strike we did. As I mentioned, there's hundreds of millions of people that now have smart speakers, the voice-enabled devices. And Yext, about a year and a half ago, signed an agreement with Amazon to push data into Alexa from our customers. So we use this as an opportunity to say, okay, let's create a campaign around this for the quarter. We'll just get going with it, but we're going to do it together. We're going to put a big, hairy, audacious goal out there of $2 million of pipe generation from this campaign. And so what did we do? Well, we built a list of the AEs, picked out the contacts that they hadn't talked to in a while or that haven't been able to get a hold of. We put together this flyer and then actually sent an Alexa Echo Dot. And it was like the perfect amount of money for a gift to send. It was like $40. It felt like somebody got something special, but it didn't feel too expensive, like they had to return it. And it was dead on in terms of a topic of conversation with it all. So we set up this series of both sending this out and then immediately had the BDRs follow up with phone calls and emails. So again, not one team doing it, everybody working together to get this thing done. And it worked, right? This is one of the quick responses we got where we sent it showed up, then we followed up with an email and she's like, oh, I'm glad you told me about that, and yes, we love to have those conversations. But obviously this is all about numbers and making sure we're getting a return on this thing. We ended up generating $8.5 million in pipeline. And it had 67 times ROI for what we paid for them to what came out the other side. Really hard to beat something like that. But it was a coordinated effort, took a lot of time, a lot of people. And it's one of those things that we somehow it ends up in one of our 4 sales strikes that we do every quarter. We just keep going after. We do it, but we send about 200 of these a quarter out to people, and it works. It gets us meetings, which is great. Another one of the sales strikes we did was the Adobe Summit. And we would go to events, and we've gone to plenty of events and sponsor our own events and do all that thing. But this one, we said, okay, let's do this one as well as a coordinated sales and marketing, everybody together approach. And they've got about 20,000 people, Adobe users who go to this thing, pretty good overlap with our people. So we said, okay, let's set a goal. It's our first year actually going to this event of $1 million generated and about 200 MQLs that we want. And again, we do this for everything we do. It's the amount of pipeline we're going to generate. Also, by the way, how much we're going to influence, because like I said, with the party of 5, you don't want to just go after generating. You also got to know how much you're touching other stuff. Number of MQLs, number of meetings. So we're measuring a lot of these things. And again, we went big on this. We said, this is probably the biggest sponsorship we've ever done at an event. We sent a lot of people from the company. But it wasn't just that. It was a campaign, a coordinated campaign. So we would do things like, we sent a survival kit beforehand. And we had the BDRs find people who were going to this thing and reach out to them with these, how to survive the Adobe Summit kits. We did a dinner that night. We sent out flyers. I did a keynote speech there on the state of the industry, and we pushed people to that. So it was this, again, this combination of not just one thing, but multiple things all piled together, and it really worked. We got 1.6 million in generated pipeline. What was interesting is about half of that came from the booth, and the other half came from the mailer. So even before people walked in the door, we were getting those meetings, getting that pipeline generated. We ended up influencing, because we didn't even realize this, there were so many people who we were already trying to sell to that were there, that we could take to that dinner that saw the expansion of our brand, that we did 8.2 million in influence, and then more than doubled our goal on the MQL side. So the sales strikes is a big part of our formula. Again, working together, coordinating that approach, and picking a couple topics and staying focused. The other is really celebrating success, right? This is big. Especially on the sales side, they're getting big commission checks. On the marketing side, not always. So it's like, how do you make sure everybody is really aligned around celebrating what's successful? And when you're sharing those pipeline goals, especially, it works really well. This is one where we raffled off to the AE who had the most meetings out of that Alexa campaign. They got their own Echo stand. We've done it where at our event 2 years ago, we had Mark Hamill presenting, so we gave a Star Wars package away. So we would get up and give that recognition live. And this is an interesting one. We found, and I'll show you some of the statistics and reporting that we do, but we were finding that we were doing actually really well on the enterprise side, driving a bunch of traffic and a bunch of pipeline. And on the SMB side, the mid-market, right in the middle, a bunch of the tactics we were doing weren't working. And so one of the thoughts we had, or strategy has, what if the SDRs, because they get paid for every meeting they had, what if they're trying to get the easy ones done really quickly? And the big brands, they know they've got to deal with those. But the mid-market ones, how do we get them focused? So we did this we didn't tell them that this was hey, we saw this data, we think you guys are cheating, here's this thing, but we lined it up where, pretty simple, $100 gift card for whichever SDR that week set the most mid-market meetings. And again, really cheap, but all of a sudden got them to focus a little bit more. That's again, because we're working well together, we could align it and send people the right way. And then the other thing we're doing, again, is just straight recognition, right? Pushing people, when marketing does something well, making sure the AEs are yelling about it, screaming about it. When the SDRs and BDRs are doing good things, again, everybody's talking about it, piling on, and just making sure everybody feels good about this stuff. All right, reporting analytics. Again, one of the real benefits of looking across the whole pipeline and redoing this entire thing is that we could have real analytics. We could have real full funnel analytics from lead all the way to close one. So this is one of those secret sales charts, but this is essentially, as a sales leader, all I ever cared about, right? I called it the revenue acceleration formula, but it's the number of SQLs I'm getting, the number of new deals, the deal size, the average deal size, and the win rate. So those are all the big things. We want to increase all of those things, right? We want more deals, we want them to be bigger, and we want to improve our win rate, right? And then divided by the length of sales cycle, so we want to shorten our sales cycle. And then retention squared, because it's really important that people stick around. So again, that's what we look at in sales. So what we did is took that mindset into marketing and said, okay, let's start measuring everything in marketing to those criteria. Is it increasing my win rate? Is this campaign that I'm doing increasing my deal size? Is it shortening my deal size? So I can look at all those factors. The actual number that comes out of this doesn't really matter. It's sort of a relative thing, but those are the key factors. So marketing generated pipeline. So this is, again, all of our lead sources going all the way through the pipeline. So again, not stopping at what got to SAL or MQL, but actually looking what made into pipeline. And we look at this daily and weekly, and we can measure and see what's having an impact. And again, not just on the number of leads don't matter. It's the leads that are generating the biggest dollars in pipeline are what matters and where we continue to double down. Again, this is our final view of the whole thing, right? Lead all the way to close, looking at conversion rates. We still, by the way, look and talk to the consultant about the industry benchmarks. At 85% or whatever from SAL to SQL, that's pretty good. I'd like my MQL to SAL to be a little bit higher, but we're looking at that and aware of it. and have actually decided, okay, it's okay because we actually have the SDRs, which are a relatively inexpensive resource, funneling out more, and I'm taking more into the top. But you can make those decisions when you're looking at this funnel the full way, the right way. Again, we're setting targets based on this, and we're tracking it, again, daily. So these are the 5 parties, and that red line is where they need to be trending, this is for the first half of the year, and the blue is where they actually are. You can see marketing was a little behind, we adjusted some spend, they caught up and then are online. Partner was a little bit behind early on. We actually, in that case, hired another person, another partner rep to go out and get us more partner deals. And that jumped up in the second half of the first half of the year, so the second quarter. BDR, same thing, we're a little behind. In that case, we had promoted a bunch of people. But again, this is the type of thing that everybody is looking at and everybody's aligned to, because this is what needs to come out the other side. Not all pipeline is created equal. It's pretty obvious, but again, because we can now measure these things, we can see and we can actually now take action on this stuff. So in this case, marketing, pretty decent win rate, but the deal size is smaller. But hey, look at that, much faster cycle times. So if I'm behind in a quarter and I want to catch up, where do I put my money? Well, I throw it into some of the marketing campaigns that are driving these quicker sales cycles. BDRs, on the other hand, only a 10% win rate. That kind of sucks. But they're, the deal sizes are bigger, but they take a little bit longer. So upsell, great win rates because we know them already. They tend to hang around a little too long. That's something on the enablement side that I also I got to deal with. But you can see and look at that pipeline and analyze that pipeline. You can slice it 100 different ways, but these are again those key revenue acceleration formula view of things. I can see how my pipeline is doing. And again, I use this to then build out a model, right? Where I'll say by segment, by party, I'll go in and figure out all the different conversion rates that I've got and use that to say, okay, how am I going to end up at my sales goal at the end of the year? Right? I got a big number to hit in terms of ACV or bookings. How much pipeline do I need in by source, by channel? And then that again turns into goals for each of these parties for the year. Some high level just touch points on analytics. Again, the late funnel stuff is what's important, but we look at the SQL, the SAL as a leading indicator quite a bit, because what we found is we have a pretty good, consistent qualification process which normalizes everything. So it normalizes what goes into the SAL side and what comes out the SQL. So while we really care about the pipeline, we still are measuring those earlier indicators. Dashboards are key, right? Like if people are looking at what they think is the same data, but they're not really sharing the same views, or they find a view that's for themselves, that doesn't work. They've got to make sure that they're all looking at, and we have one team that creates all the dashboards so that everybody's using the same thing. I mean, this is my biggest pet peeve on data, but like just showing data doesn't mean anything. If the title or story isn't told about what's happening in the data, it's just data. You've got to now use this power, all this extra data you have, to tell a story and to take action on it. And yes, it is very possible to overanalyze data. If you get all this data and you can slice it 1,000 different ways, that's probably one of the things that we've tried to fix over time. I joke that the title of this is perfect alignment. There's never perfect alignment, and certainly for us, it's not perfect. Probably one of the biggest challenges we've had is going international. It starts with sort of the team. What's great is the demand gen team and the sales development teams that I've built in the US, we've had a great ability to specialize. You're just the SDR, you're just the SEO guy, you're just the website guy. Like we've got that going nicely. But then when you get out to EMEA, where every country has different languages and you've got smaller teams, everyone's sort of a generalist, and a lot of that breaks down. So that's where we've seen a lot of the band stuff not work, a lot of the, or just it takes more time to get it going there. Obviously GDPR makes everything more complicated. And then the language and localization, on that side, obviously you want to take what you've done and take these sales strikes that you've done and try and make them as relatable as possible around the globe. But the reality is, it doesn't work to just often translate it. You've got to find the valuable stuff in the data. They tell me that this is something when the AE said, hey, I want to see this version of the data, and they help build it. I don't speak German, so I don't know what it actually says, but that's a sense of going beyond localization and translation, but really using the content for the local audience. The other thing we found is that we find gaps. Like, we thought we set up this perfect process, and I remember getting 3 emails a week from my CEO going, oh, somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter and said that we never responded to this thing. Well, it turns out they're in like a country that we don't support, and they called into our German office, and that person didn't respond the right way or say anything, and so you get these nasty grams. So you really have to get really diligent about filling in all of those gaps. So there's a lot that we've done. Again, it's reorganizing the team, resetting up the expectations and how we think about goals. It's these sales strikes that really work well to get everybody aligned and focused. It's celebrating the success and making sure everybody feels like they're part of it and getting the recognition that they deserve. So there's a lot to it. So what's next? What are we working on? Where do we go with the next? Lead scoring is a big one. We've got basic lead scoring. This is something that I think can really accelerate us to the next level, where if we can know more about that person up front, that conversion rate that I showed you of the SDRs that I want to increase, that probably gets better if I can do better lead scoring. Multi-touch attribution. I think, again, understanding what actually has relevance in the sales cycle is really important. And to do that, you really do need to at least have a data scientist who can look at multi-touch attribution and really understand, is something a cause of somebody to buy, or is there a correlation, right? Like, did that guy come to dinner because he was going to buy already, or did he come to dinner and that made him buy? Like, that takes another level of this. Customer marketing, we do a great job now with our prospects, but there's a lot of this stuff that can be applied to your existing customer base to make sure they know about new products, that they know about upsells and the rest of it. So we're working on that. Email nurture, I think this is a big place, again, where you can fill in the gaps and you can keep going, where you don't want to have a human reaching out to everybody. There's the right time to hit them with an email and a series of emails to warm them up. Sort of leads back to that lead scoring of, if you can move them along with the right tools, you can get them there. This is a fun one we're going to try out. We call it 3x3x3, but essentially it's when an SDR gets a lead, they go out and in less than 3 minutes find 3 more contacts from that company and 3 facts about them. So just a quick kind of search on them to try and take from what a lead could be to expand it. And then the last one, I think my LinkedIn rep is actually here, but we're talking about, we use LinkedIn well on the sales side, and tracking our leads there, and then we use it really well for ABM on the marketing side, but we don't actually use them together well. So we've got to start doing that, and that's the next thing we're doing. So thank you very much. I am out of time. I'm happy to take some questions outside. I guess they don't want me to do it up here, but really appreciate you guys spending 45 minutes with me. Hopefully you learned a little something and enjoy the rest of the show.